Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun!
Uriel sobbed, seeking solace in the confines of his mother's spacious closet, enveloped in the rich fabric of her red dress, a vibrant contrast to his raw emotions. The familiar fragrance of her perfume permeated the air, simultaneously soothing and triggering his tears. He was unaware of the world around him until the sharp tap of heels on the hardwood floor jolted him back to reality. Paralyzed with fear, he tried to blend into the shadows, praying that she would continue on her path. Instead, the footsteps halted, followed by a pause just beyond the closet's entrance. "Who's there?" The voice, gentle yet firm, belonged to his mother. "Honey, are you in there?" His mother's gentle voice carried no hint of anger or disgust, only concern. Still, Uriel couldn't bring himself to respond. He curled into himself, wishing he could disappear entirely. The door creaked open, spilling light into the dimly lit space. Uriel squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the worst. "Oh, sweetheart." His mother's voice was closer now, filled with tenderness. He felt her kneel beside him, a warm hand coming to rest on his shoulder. "It's okay. You don't have to hide." Slowly, Uriel raised his head, daring to meet his mother's gaze. Instead of the disappointment or revulsion he'd feared, he found only love and acceptance in her eyes.
"I'm sorry,"
he choked out, fresh tears spilling down his cheeks. "I didn't mean to. I just wanted to try it on. I know I shouldn't have." "Shh," his mother soothed, pulling him into a tight embrace.
"You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing at all."
For several long moments, they sat there on the closet floor, Uriel clinging to his mother, as years of pent-up emotions poured out of him. When his sobs finally subsided, she gently pulled back, cupping his face in her hands. "Uriel, my love, I want you to listen to me very carefully. There is nothing wrong with you, nothing at all. And if this," she gestured to the dress, "is who you truly are, then I am here to support you every step of the way." Uriel blinked, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. You're not mad?" His mother laughed softly, shaking her head. "Oh, honey, the only thing that upsets me is that you felt you had to hide this from me for so long. I love you, no matter what, and I want you to be happy, whoever you are." A weight Uriel hadn't even realized he'd been carrying lifted from his chest. He took a deep, shuddering breath, feeling as though he could truly breathe for the first time in years.
"Now,"
his mother said, a hint of excitement creeping into her voice. "What do you say we get you out of that gown? It's not really your color, darling, and find something that suits you better?" Uriel's eyes widened. "You mean, you want to help me?" "Of course." She stood, offering her hand to help him up. "You forget, I used to be a fashion consultant. If my child is going to explore their identity, they're going to do it in style." For the first time that evening, a smile tugged at Uriel's lips. He took his mother's hand, allowing her to pull him to his feet. "First things first," she said, eyeing him critically. "We need to work on your posture. Stand up straight, shoulders back. That's it. Now, let's see you walk." Uriel took a few tentative steps, nearly tripping over the hem of the too long gown. His mother clucked her tongue. We'll need to get you some heels, but for now, let's focus on the basics. Smaller steps, darling, and move from your hips, not your shoulders. For the next hour, Uriel's mother guided him through the fundamentals of feminine movement and poise. She demonstrated the proper way to sit, how to cross his legs elegantly, and even the art of applying makeup. Remember, she said, as she showed him how to blend foundation. Less is more. You want to enhance your natural beauty, not mask it entirely. As the night wore on, Uriel felt a transformation taking place, not just in his appearance, but in his very being. With each new skill he learned, each encouraging word from his mother, he felt more and more like his true self. Finally, his mother stepped back, surveying her handiwork with a critical eye. There's just one thing missing, she mused. She disappeared into the depths of her closet, returning moments later with a navy blue blazer dress and a pair of matching pumps. These should fit you perfectly, she said, holding them out. Why don't you try them on? Uriel took the clothes with trembling hands, retreating to the bathroom to change. When he emerged, he barely recognized the person staring back at him in the full-length mirror. The blazer dress hugged his figure in all the right places, accentuating curves he hadn't even known he possessed. The heels added height and confidence to his stance, but it was his face that truly captivated him, softened by subtle makeup, framed by his blonde hair that his mother had styled into loose waves. For the first time in his life, Uriel saw himself as he truly was. And in that moment, he knew, she knew, that Uriel was no longer the right name. Willa, she whispered, testing the name on her lips. It felt right, like coming home after a long journey. Her mother appeared in the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. You look beautiful, she said softly. Is Willa the name you've chosen? Willa nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Her mother crossed the room, enveloping her in a warm embrace. Well then, Willa, my darling daughter, are you ready to face the world? Willa took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as she'd been taught. I think I am, she said, surprising herself with the confidence in her voice. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity as Willa began her transition in earnest. Her mother proved to be an invaluable ally, accompanying her to doctor's appointments, helping her build a new wardrobe, and offering unwavering support through every step of the process. One sunny afternoon, as they strolled through the local mall, Willa's mother suddenly stopped in front of a chic boutique. Oh, this is perfect! She exclaimed, tugging Willa toward the entrance. Inside, racks of elegant dresses and sophisticated separates lined the walls. Willa ran her fingers over the luxurious fabrics, marveling at the craftsmanship. Can I help you ladies find anything? A saleswoman asked, approaching with a warm smile. Willa tensed, waiting for the moment of recognition, the flicker of judgment in the woman's eyes. But it never came. The saleswoman's smile remained genuine, her gaze moving easily between Willa and her mother. Yes, please, Willa's mother said, squeezing her hand encouragingly. My daughter here is in need of a new outfit for a special occasion. The words, my daughter, sent a thrill through Willa's heart. She stood a little taller, confidence blooming in her chest. Of course, the saleswoman replied. What did you have in mind? For the next hour, Willa tried on outfit after outfit, twirling in front of the mirror as her mother and the saleswoman offered opinions and suggestions. With each new ensemble, Willa felt more comfortable in her own skin, more at home in her body. Finally, she emerged from the dressing room in a stunning navy blue cocktail dress that fell just above her knees. The saleswoman gasped. "Oh my," she said. "That color is absolutely perfect with your blonde hair. You look radiant." Willa turned to the mirror, her breath catching in her throat. The woman staring back at her was poised, elegant, and undeniably feminine. For perhaps the first time in her life, her outer appearance truly matched how she felt inside. "This is the one," she said, her voice filled with quiet certainty. As they left the store, shopping bags in hand, Willa's mother turned to her with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, there's one more thing we need to do to complete your transformation." Willa raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what's that?" Her mother grinned. "We're going to get your ears pierced." The jewelry store was bustling with activity, but Willa hardly noticed the other customers. Her focus was entirely on the display of earrings before her, a dizzying array of studs, hoops, and dangling gems. "Which ones do you like, dear?" her mother asked, gesturing to the selection. Willa's eyes were drawn to a pair of delicate pearl studs. "Those," she said, pointing. "They're simple, but elegant." Her mother nodded approvingly. "Excellent choice. Pearls are always in style." As the piercing technician prepared her tools, Willa felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. Her mother must have sensed her anxiety because she reached out and took Willa's hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. "You've got this," she whispered. "Just a little pinch, and then it's done." Willa nodded, taking a deep breath. She closed her eyes as the technician approached, focusing on the warmth of her mother's hand in hers. There was a moment of pressure, a brief sting, and then it was over. Willa opened her eyes to find the technician smiling at her. "All done?" she said cheerfully. "Would you like to see?" Willa nodded eagerly. The technician held up a mirror, and Willa gasped softly. The pearl studs glinted in her earlobes, adding a touch of sophistication to her appearance. "They're perfect," she breathed. As they left the mall, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink. Willa paused for a moment, tilting her face up to catch the last warm rays of daylight. "How do you feel?" her mother asked, watching her with a mixture of pride and love. Willa considered the question, taking stock of the myriad emotions swirling within her. "I feel whole," she said finally, "like I'm finally becoming who I was always meant to be." Her mother pulled her into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Willa. You're the bravest person I know." That night, as Willa stood in front of her bedroom mirror, she marveled at how much had changed in such a short time. The navy blue blazer dress hung in her closet, a promise of the life that lay ahead. Her new earrings caught the light, a small but significant symbol of her journey. She ran a hand through her blonde hair, considering its length. Perhaps it was time for a change there too. A new hairstyle to match her new identity. As she crawled into bed, Willa felt a sense of peace settle over her. There were still challenges ahead, she knew. The world wasn't always kind to people like her, but for the first time in her life, she felt equipped to face those challenges head on. She had the unwavering support of her mother, a growing understanding of who she truly was, and the courage to live authentically. Whatever the future held, Willa knew she was ready to embrace it. Heels, pearls, and all. The next morning, Willa woke to the sound of birds chirping outside her window. For a moment, she lay still, savoring the feeling of contentment that had settled over her. Then, with a burst of energy, she threw back the covers and headed to her closet. She bypassed the few remaining items of men's clothing, her hand instead reaching for the navy blue blazer dress. As she slipped it on, she felt a thrill of excitement. Today was the day she would step out into the world as her true self. Willa took her time with her makeup, carefully applying foundation, blush, and a subtle eyeshadow as her mother had taught her. She finished with a swipe of pale pink lipstick, pressing her lips together to even out the color. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her face, and she tucked a strand behind her ear, the pearl stud catching the morning light. She slipped on her navy pumps, took a deep breath, and headed downstairs. Her mother was in the kitchen, brewing a pot of coffee. She turned as Willa entered, her face lighting up with a proud smile. "Good morning, beautiful," she said, pulling Willa into a warm hug. "Are you ready for your big day?" Willa nodded, though she couldn't quite keep the nervousness from her voice. "As ready as I'll ever be, I suppose." Her mother cupped her face gently. "You are strong, you are brave, and you are absolutely gorgeous. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise, okay?" Willa felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back, not wanting to ruin her carefully applied makeup. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." After a quick breakfast, Willa found herself standing at the front door, her hand on the knob. This was it. The moment she would step out into the world as Willa, no longer hiding behind the facade of Uriel. Her mother appeared beside her, car keys in hand. "I thought I might drive you to work today, if that's all right, for moral support." Willa felt a rush of gratitude. "That would be wonderful." The drive to the office where Willa worked as a graphic designer was quiet, both women lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled up to the building, Willa's mother reached over and squeezed her hand. "Remember, you've got this, and I'm just a phone call away if you need me." Willa nodded, swallowing hard. "I love you, Mom." "I love you too, sweetheart. Now go show them who you really are." With a deep breath, Willa stepped out of the car and walked toward the office building, her heels clicking confidently on the pavement. She could do this. She was Willa, and she was finally ready to live her truth. As she pushed through the revolving door into the lobby, Willa felt every eye turn toward her. She kept her chin up, remembering her mother's lessons on posture and poise. The security guard at the desk did a double take as she approached, but quickly recovered his professional demeanor. "Good morning, miss," he said, a hint of confusion in his voice.
May I see your ID, please?
This was the moment Willa had been dreading. She reached into her purse and pulled out her employee badge, still bearing the name Uriel and a photo of her former self. She handed it over, her heart pounding. The guard looked at the ID, then back at Willa, his brow furrowed. "I'm sorry, but this doesn't seem to—" "It's me," Willa said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm transitioning. I haven't had a chance to update my ID yet." Understanding dawned in the guard's eyes. To Willa's relief, he simply nodded and handed the badge back.
"I see. Well, have a good day, miss."
"Thank you," Willa breathed, feeling as though she'd just cleared her first major hurdle. As the elevator carried her up to her floor, Willa tried to calm her racing heart. She'd informed her boss of her transition via email the night before, but she hadn't had time to tell her coworkers. This would be the first time they'd see her as Willa. The elevator doors slid open, and Willa stepped out onto her floor. The usual morning buzz of activity fell silent as heads turned in her direction. She could hear whispers starting up almost immediately. Taking a deep breath, Willa walked toward her desk, her heels echoing in the sudden quiet. She kept her eyes forward, refusing to let her confidence waver. As she neared her workstation, her friend and colleague, Tom, stood up from his desk. His eyes widened as he took in her appearance, but then a warm smile spread across his face.
"Well, well,"
he said, loud enough for the entire office to hear.
"Look who decided to show us all up in the fashion department today. You look amazing!"
Willa felt a rush of affection for her friend. Leave it to Tom to diffuse the tension with humor. She returned his smile, feeling some of her nervousness melt away. "Thanks, Tom," she said. "I decided it was time for a change." Tom's easy acceptance seemed to break the spell of silence that had fallen over the office. Slowly, other coworkers began to approach, offering compliments and asking questions. While there were a few uncomfortable stares and whispers, the overall response was far more positive than Willa had dared to hope. As she settled in at her desk, Willa's boss, Sandra, approached. "Willa," she said, using the name Willa had provided in her email. "Could I see you in my office for a moment?" Willa nodded, following Sandra to her private office. Once inside, Sandra closed the door and turned to face her. "First of all," Sandra began, "I want to thank you for your email. It was very brave of you to share that with me, and I want you to know that you have my full support, both personally and professionally." Willa felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Sandra. That means a lot to me." Sandra nodded. "We'll need to update your information in our systems, of course. And if you experience any issues or discrimination from anyone in the office, I want you to come to me immediately. Understood?" "Yes, absolutely," Willa said, feeling a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected such wholehearted support from her boss. As she left Sandra's office and returned to her desk, Willa felt a sense of peace settle over her. There would be challenges ahead, she knew. Not everyone would be as accepting as her coworkers seemed to be, but for now, in this moment, she was Willa. She was living her truth, and that was enough. The rest of the workday passed in a blur of meetings, design projects, and quiet conversations with curious but supportive coworkers. By the time Willa packed up her things to leave, she felt both exhausted and exhilarated. As she stepped out of the office building, she spotted her mother's car idling at the curb. Willa hurried over, sliding into the passenger seat with a sigh of relief. "So?" her mother asked, eyes bright with anticipation. "How did it go?" Willa couldn't hold back her smile. "It was amazing," she said. "Better than I could have ever imagined." As they drove home, Willa recounted the events of the day. The security guard's understanding, Tom's warm welcome, Sandra's support. With each story, her mother's smile grew wider. "I'm so proud of you, Willa," she said as they pulled into their driveway. "You've taken such a huge step today." Willa nodded, feeling a swell of emotion. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. Thank you for everything." That evening, as Willa stood in front of her mirror, carefully removing her makeup, she reflected on how far she'd come. From the scared, confused person crying in her mother's closet to the confident woman who had faced the world head-on today, she ran a hand through her blonde hair, thinking again about possibly changing the style. Maybe tomorrow she'd ask her mother about booking an appointment at the salon. As she slipped into her pajamas, Willa felt a sense of excitement for what the future held. There would be more challenges, more hurdles to overcome, but she was ready to face them. She was Willa, and she was finally, truly herself.
Thanks for watching my girlies. Be sure to check out Patreon for more.